Hello. My name's Patrick. I'm a nerd. I have the Doctor Who tattoo to support that claim. Also, these glasses aren't even real. I just wanted to look smart. That's how much of a nerd I am. Just some quick housekeeping. I did not know this elevator is functional, so if somebody else comes out this elevator, can we all clap as soon as they walk out super confused? That would absolutely make my night. How great was that first talk? When Amy put on a call for like similar themed talks, it took everything in me to not do a Bartleby the Scrivener talk, because I feel like that is really a voice to my generation as a millennial. Does anybody know like the famous line from Bartleby? I would prefer not to. When I was edgy and like an undergrad psych major, instead of paying taxes, I mailed the IRS a letter that said, I would prefer not to. Did not think it was funny. But instead, I'm going to talk about the world's loneliest whale and how that applies to just everyday life. I myself am a psychology professor, but also a licensed professional counselor, which is a psychotherapist. And I've been waiting for this day where my knowledge of psychology and SeaWorld, also, I worked there before I knew it was bad, don't judge me, but the knowledge I acquired from SeaWorld get to merge into one. Look at me with a beluga whale. Ignore the puka shells and the blonde hair, I was going through something. Anyways. So it started with a call. Is anybody familiar with the story of the world's loneliest whale? So there started back in the 80s, I believe. Yeah, 1989, the Navy was looking for, not Red Dawn. What's the submarine movie? Red October, thank you. It was Red something. Looking for submarines underwater and using sonar to find that. And that's when they first picked up a 52 hertz whale, which is interesting because most whales vocalize between 15 and 25. If you're not familiar with hertz, it's basically just like the frequency or the size of the sound waves that make. So also, if you're not familiar, if you've ever seen like a whale show at SeaWorld or another marine mammal park, whale trainers aren't saying like, good job, or giving like vocal reinforcement. They're using dog whistles because they can only hear a specific frequency. Especially with beluga whales, that's why their melon is so big, is because that's how they hear the sonar coming back, right? So this whale that's communicating at a frequency that no other whales can hear is a very sad thing, right? Because it can literally be in front of another whale, make a vocalization, and that whale would not hear anything at all. It's just how, the same thing when I talk to women, they're just like. So it started with a call, and I actually have a clip of what it sounds like. It's something that we can actually hear at this frequency, other whales just can't. So this is what it sounds like.
Hello! I'm so lonely.
It's really subtle. I don't know if you can hear it because it's right at the edge of what we're able to hear as humans. So the researchers didn't understand what was going on. If you saw, it started with a call, and the researchers didn't understand it all. I was trying to go for a Dr. Seuss rhyming thing, and then I gave up on the next slide. So, but we didn't know if it was a mutation. Is this a new breed? Is this a hybrid? Some of the best estimations is maybe it's a pilot whale, blue whale hybrid. But it is obviously very unique, and it's still alone to this day. We first heard it in 1989, and the last time we heard it was about, I think, 4 years ago or so. And there's never been another 52 hertz whale that we've heard. So our best guess, we've also never seen it, for one. So our best guess is this sad, lonely whale continues to swim on their own. Which is really sad, because whales are very highly complex individuals, right? Like, they're very hyper intelligent. There was a period in time in psychology that we thought that like brain size correlates with like extra intelligence, but in the animal kingdom, to some degree, that is true. Like, the size of their brains do correlate with more complex thought, rational thinking. They have highly complex communication. It's really interesting, especially with like orcas and blue whales. They've been heard to use vocalizations that are unique to other individuals in the same way that we use names. They essentially name each other. They also have regional dialects like we do. If you go to the Pacific or the Atlantic and you see the same breed of whale, they're going to be vocalizing with very specific regional dialects as that. My favorite fun fact about blue whale is it is the largest animal in the known universe. Not just the planet Earth, but like in our galaxy, this is the largest animal that we know exists. They also have very complex social structures. They use transmission of information, like culturally and generationally. They've demonstrated how to use tools. They pass that information on to their offspring and other members of the pod. They use very highly coordinated hunting techniques. Remember in Jurassic Park when he's like, clever girl? We could say that with whales. They do the same thing. They wouldn't hear us, though. They also have like fantastic long-term memory, emotional intelligence, and empathy. They're one of the few animals in the world that also have self-awareness like we do. They can recognize their own reflections in the mirror. We learned this with infants using the Rouge test, where we'd put a little bit of like red something on their heads and then put babies in the mirror to see like at what age do they recognize like, oh, I need to wipe this off. We do the same thing with dolphins and with whales to see what type of self-awareness that they have of their own reflection. And they also share fashion tips. And this isn't just recently, but recently this hit the news that there was a pod of killer whales that was wearing salmons as hats and just like swimming. We have no idea why. And this too has been documented since the 80s. Like legitimately they're just walking or swimming around wearing salmons as hats. So we also know that their pods are very instrumental. It's not just out of convenience that there's a purpose for them. And they're usually matriarchal, #smash the patriarchy. They have enhanced problem solving that they use as groups. They have very specific members of their pods with very specific functions and duties, which offers like a reduced sense of fear and anxiety. That is one thing that socialization offers most mammals, especially social mammals, is that we have a more like relaxed state when we're in groups and numbers. And so we'll talk about how that applies to humans in a little bit, but whales that are on their own, or most mammals that are on their own, are in just a chronic state of stress, or what we call allostasis, where if this is like your normal homeostasis, where your body's at when you're not stressed or depressed, when you're alone for too long, your body just kind of runs like a car that idles too high. In fact, if you stay there too long, this will be your new baseline. So no amount of coping or self-care or regulation will ever get you back down here without a significant intervention. They have that learning, knowledge transfer, cooperation, and they just have innate needs similar to ours where the brains are programmed for constant social evaluation. That's why, like, even when we're around strangers or people that we couldn't care less about, there's still an element of cringe when we do something embarrassing, right? How many of you have been out of the country, you'll never see those people again, but you just, like, accidentally farted too loud, and you're like, oh my God, I just want to die. Just own it, just fart in. Go to Italy and just fart everywhere, y'all. But their brains, similar to ours, like, need that acceptance. And so when they're not being accepted, when they're not a part of a pod or a group, it's a chronic state of stress. So the impacts of social isolation is that chronic stress. And the interesting thing about stress is when we talk about stress, we typically focus on the cognitive or the emotional experience or stress. But the body actually interprets stress as a teratogen or any type of disease or bacteria that shouldn't be there. The reason why your joints get inflamed when you're in a stressed state is because your body thinks that there's something that it needs to attack. So it's not uncommon to get fevers, to get joint pain, to get backaches, to get GI issues and other like tummy problems when you're in a stressed state because your body thinks that there's actually something to fight. And so it negatively impacts our physiological health as well as whales. We see declined physical health and poorer health outcomes, irreversible psychological damage, reduced resilience to any type of problems or even physical ailments, significantly shortened lifespan, and we've even seen whales develop a type of what we would be comparable to us as psychosis and self-harm as well. Whales that have been in captivity or in isolation specifically for so long will demonstrate self-harm or even suicidal behavior because their brains just can't handle that isolation. Unfortunately, we learned this through trial and error in the very, very early days of marine mammal parks when they were capturing whales. Obviously, whales are pretty large creatures, so they didn't have enough room in pools for multiple whales, so they would just have one whale at a time, and they would die so very quickly. In fact, humans do that too. It's called failure to thrive. Like, you can take an infant or a toddler, and you can meet all of its basic needs. You can check every box in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs up to love and belonging, and if there's not a sense of connection and purpose, that infant will die, similar to the whales. And we learned that the hard way, unfortunately. So it made me think, as a psychologist and as a nerd and as a psychology professor, this is what the inside of my brain looks like, by the way. How does this apply as a life lesson to us? Especially when you're looking at the news, and there's so many news articles that is claiming that loneliness is the new global epidemic. And we don't use those words and those labels lightly. The new epidemic. How many of you felt lonely in the last week? How many of you felt lonely in the last month? How many of you felt lonely in the last day? Yeah, it's not a rarity, right? And now some people are even looking for technology to solve problems. You know, there's entire Reddit subreddits. Y'all are all nerds, so y'all are on Reddit. There's entire subreddits devoted to how to maximize the romantic benefits of ChatGPT. And that's very problematic because now it has a super creepy voice. Let's try it out. It's thinking. Am I lovable? I can't even get a ChatGPT lady to talk to me. Whew, okay. Thank you. Somebody rescued my ego. The signal's bad, y'all. But this is a real phenomenon. I've had 2 clients in the last 6 months that have come that have replaced human contact with ChatGPT because it's really just one, ChatGPT data scraped and was trained on social media platforms like Twitter and Reddit. So it's very like human-like in its responses. And now that it has like vocalizations that you can pick that sound very human, it's like that movie Her, where you can replace like actual human connection with this more like synthetic replacement. Approximately 16 people worldwide, which is 1 in 6, experience loneliness on a daily level. Around 20%, which is 1 in 5, repeats lonely a lot of the day yesterday. Globally, 23% of people said they felt loneliness a lot of the previous day. A meta-analysis revealed that 27.6% of older adults experience loneliness, with rates 30% in North America. And we see increased rates, a correlation of loneliness with more individualistic cultures than we do collectivist cultures, right? I'm biracial, where, if you couldn't tell, I'm very Mexican, but I'm also half white. I know, shocker. Where my white side of the family, very disengaged. Like, I'm lucky if I hear from them once a year. My Mexican side of especially when my grandmother was still alive, if I did not call her every single day, fill in the blanks. Y'all are from Texas. She's going to lose her mind, right? But it's not uncommon to have multi-generational households to keep in daily communication with that. So when we see this correlation of like more loneliness in individualistic cultures, it's because we have to be independent. We shouldn't rely on others for happiness. We got to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps. So it's not surprised that 1 in 3 people, or 50% of people in institutional settings, that's nursing homes, that's assisted living. In the US, 30% of adults ages 18 to 34 said experience lonely daily or several times a week. Higher rates in men, because men are not socially conditioned to be vulnerable or asked to be around people or asked to get their needs met. Another Reddit story, at one of the universities that I teach at, I follow them because I want to see what they're saying about me. I follow the majority of the posts, other than like, where do I park without getting towed, is how do I make friends? Where do I go on campus to meet people? Do you go to the rec to meet people? Can you walk up to somebody and befriend them at a dining hall? This is the most common post at this university, which is really sad. So just like with whales, for us, it is also a biological imperative. We do feel that phenomenon of failure to thrive if we're not in social enough settings. It'll also impact language acquisition. That whole idea of like Tarzan, like a baby being abandoned in the jungle and turning feral, could actually happen because our brains need that social learning environment to be able to develop language, to be able to develop problem-solving techniques, to be able to develop empathy and critical thinking skills. These are not innate skills in us. They have to be developed in social settings. We also experience cognitive decline or even underdevelopment. How many of you remember like post-pandemic when the world started opening up, or we live in Texas, we pretended like it never happened. When you started going out into the real world, how socially awkward it was to socialize with people. Do you remember like going to HEB for the first time? Like it really felt like somebody, like we were all told that somebody is a serial killer, but we don't know who it was. So we're all just walking around like, oh, Jesus. Even as a psychotherapist, I went to teletherapy and then back to the office, and I just forgot how to have human conversation. I was just sitting there in my like sweet like therapist sweater, like, okay, make eye contact. That's too much eye contact. What am I doing with my hands, like Ricky Bobby? Okay, sit weird. Okay, now they're looking at you. Why are you saying all this out loud? Now they know. But our brains and our ability to socialize really is one of those use it or lose it situations, which is mind-blowing. It also increases our mortality risks. People that experience chronic loneliness develop cardiovascular disease at the same rates as chronic smokers. How wild is that? We can literally die of broken hearts if we're not socializing on a regular enough basis. We also develop the same levels of chronic stress as the lonely whales do, again, with that allostatic load that will just develop, and this will be your new homeostatic basis. And increased correlation of dementia for people that are isolated, which is really sad if you pair that with that last statistic that 50% of people that are institutionalized experience loneliness chronically. We also have weakened immune function, which is sad, but also one happy thing about immune functioning and T-cell production. Last time I was here, I was speaking with Dr. Patch Adams. You remember the movie from back in the 90s? We were talking about the benefits of laughter. One way to boost your immune system is laughter. For whatever reason, laughter boosts T-cell production. So you can come. We're talking about nerd stuff. Come on. Oh, they just ran away. And also contribute. Yes, they made it! Also leads to mental illness. Strong correlation, and this is a big problem in our criminal justice system as well, for maximum security prisons that are essentially built as just large-scale solitary confinement dormitories lead to high levels of psychosis, delusional thinking, self-harm, and suicidal ideation. Just from isolation. Our brains just don't know what to do when we're completely deprived of social settings. So people are flocking to artificial socialization, things that replace the bare minimum of what qualifies as human connection. It's analogous to ditching all healthy foods and only eating McDonald's for the rest of your life. Like, will it sustain you? Sure. Like, are you going to thrive? Is it providing nourishment? Like, are you getting the necessary nutrients? No. Will it keep you alive for the bare minimum? Yes. But social media gives that illusion of connection. How many of you, honestly, spend more time connecting with people via social media or virtual platforms than in person? Yeah, because we live in Austin. It's expensive to go do anything. So y'all get a pass. But a lot of people are using social media to supplement that, especially teenagers. Like adolescents today, did y'all know that like getting a driver's license is no longer a developmental milestone for this new generation? They just don't care. For the millennials and up, that was the one thing. Even if you were poor like me and didn't even have a car, just the fact that you had a driver's license, right, was such a big thing to exercise independence. Teens these days don't, because their whole world is virtual. There's open world video games. There's video games where you can communicate just audio only or video. So gaming, social media, work replaces that. How many of you have very like social jobs that like at the end of the day, you just don't, you're all peopled out. You don't want to see people anymore, right? I love being a professor. I love being a therapist. But after talking for 8 hours straight, there's just not a lot left in the tank to incentivize going out and getting more socialization, even though my whole day is spent projecting outward and filling other people's cups and not filling my own. And that leads to isolation and loneliness as well. That's why you can feel lonely but not physically be alone. I'm sure there's people in this crowd right now who are just realizing like, oh shit, I feel lonely, even though you're surrounded by people and potential friends. So what actual in-person socialization and connection offers that we can't get from these other synthetic versions is the quality, the depth of relationships. We can't get that same depth. There is some comfort and some arguably more vulnerability because digital spaces offer that anonymity, but there's something about just being in the physical presence of others that offers like a co-regulation and has a physiological impact on us. We can also co-regulate with mirror neurons. How many of you have that one friend that even when you're bouncing off the walls anxious, just their mere presence just calms you down? It's really good because that's how we're primed. Like one of the functions of mirror neurons is to be able to either react when everybody else is reacting. That's why if I did, oh my God, most of you instinctively will look in that direction because your survival instincts tells you, he sees something that I don't, I should go look over there. And that goes both ways. When I'm calm and you're amped up, it's like, okay, well, they're calm, so I guess I don't need to be amped up. I'm gonna calm myself as well. And we can't get that from virtual spaces. Better social cues so we can develop our actual social connections and our ability to socialize. Physical contact, which also helps with the co-regulation as well as our feel-good hormones like dopamine and oxytocin, what we call the cuddle hormone, really can't be triggered in virtual spaces. It really needs that physical contact as well. And then just enhanced relationships, and there's reports of higher relationship satisfaction when we're actually seeing each other in person versus those virtual spaces. So additional, we have the increased quality of life, the longer lifespan. It adds to resiliency, not only just for regular trials and tribulations, but also with things such as addictions. Has anybody heard of the experiment known as Rat Park? Oh, really? Oh, that's awesome. Y'all should join my psychology classes because they don't do the reading at all. Essentially what Rat Park was, this is a huge distillation and oversimplification, but they wanted to see like what community does for mammals. So they put a rat alone in a cage with a normal water bottle and a water bottle. I think it had cocaine or heroin. We'll just call it the party water bottle, but it had drugs in it. And when the rat was alone, once it found the party water bottle, it just lived there until more often than not, it died. Either overdosed or just completely neglected its food and starved. But then they repeated the experiment and they put it in what they called Rat Park, which had environmental enhancement devices, it had wheels to run on it, but more importantly, it had other rats to congregate with. And they then reintroduced the normal water bottle and the party water bottle. And occasionally a rat would go kind of like hang out by the party water bottle. None of them died. That community offered more resilience and just protective factors against addiction and self-inflicted harm just by having other rats there to socialize with. So it offers that resilience as well. A sense of belonging, too. If you ever get curious, how many of you watch like murder documentaries and cult documentaries, and you're like, how do people fall for that? I like the meme that's like, I would never be dumb enough to join a cult, but I would be curious enough to join a cult. Like, what are they doing? But a lot of that is driven by a sense of belonging, right? Like, who would willingly join a gang? Who would willingly join a cult? People that are vulnerable and desperate, whose mental health is suffering from a lack of connection, that are offered a free pass to just be somewhere where they feel accepted and seen and invited. It also offers that emotional regulation that we talked about. Prefrontal cortex development, which is the raddest part of our brain. It's the newest, most recently evolved part of our brain. It's this part right here. It's also the first one to malfunction, where a lot of mental illness comes from. It's also the first part of the brain to turn off when you're in fight or flight, because all of your logical thinking, rational thinking, language and stuff comes here. That's why when we're in arguments and we're like in that fight or flight mode, we say a bunch of crap we regret, and then once we calm down, we're like, ooh, I shouldn't have talked about farting in Italy in front of a crowd. But that develops a lot more in social settings as well. And then enhanced problem solving, because it offers a diversity of thinking. Like racist and prejudiced people just blow me away, because it's like, one, why would you want to have just like carbon copies of yourself? That seems hella boring. But two, the more heterogeneous a group is, the more diversity of thoughts and problem solving it offers. There's a common interview question that tech companies ask, and it's, where do you keep the ketchup? How many of you keep your ketchup in the refrigerator? How many of you keep the ketchup in the pantry? A few of you, weirdos. I didn't know this was a thing until I learned about this question. But what it is the question is a nonsensical question, but it offers like diversity of thinking, because it tells you that if you have a problem, let's just say you have a hot dog, and you really want to put a condiment on it. If you are a ketchup in the refrigerator person, and you go to the refrigerator getting your ketchup, but you're out of ketchup, the possible solutions in front of you are just other things that are in the refrigerator. It might be mustard, it might be mayonnaise if you're a weirdo, it might be relish, it might be barbecue sauce, right? But if you're a ketchup in the pantry person, then the possible solutions are only going to be what's immediately in front of you in the pantry. So you have more diverse possible solutions for the same problem that two different populations have, right? So that enhanced problem solving is really only established by diversity of thinking with heterogeneous groups. That's why heterogeneous groups are more likely to survive than homogeneous groups that are very similar. There was also the longest longitudinal study that's still occurring. It's been going on for 85 years of what impacts happiness and overall quality of life, and it's found out it is social connection. Predicts like far outweighs socioeconomic status, career advancement, life experiences. It really comes down to human connection. And there was a bunch of Harvard nerds that just went on the streets and recruited people from all age demographics, genders, backgrounds, religions, ethnicities. And this is the most common theme that they found, is that social connection is the biggest predictor of increased quality of life among anything else. Because they didn't live in a city with dope chips and queso like we do. So what can we learn from the world's loneliest whale? What is inspiring is the whale never gives up, right? It continues to call out. Its brain hasn't atrophied. It hasn't taken its own life. It hasn't just given up. We have a term called learned helplessness. Some of you are psych nerds. This makes me so happy. Who's heard of the term learned helplessness? Oh, hell yeah. Please come take my class. So learned helplessness was a term coined by a researcher named Martin Seligman, who's the founder of positive psychology, who founded positive psychology in 1998. Also, he's a sociopath that electrocuted dogs. So what he did was that he had a cage, and half of the cage was electrified. And similar to Pavlov, he would play a sound, and then half of that cage would get spicy. And very quickly, the dogs realized when that sound happens, this side gets spicy, so the dogs came on this side. And then he repeated the same experiment, but he put a little gate here, but the dogs could easily jump over it. So same thing, sound would happen, dogs figured out this side gets spicy, so they would jump over, get to the side that's safe. The saddest part is he recreated it a third time. There was no escape. You could not get off of the spicy side. So the first few trials, the dogs would lose their mind. They would dig, they would scratch, they would whine, they would look for a place out. And eventually, what happened? I think you know. Yeah, they laid down. Not only did they stop trying, they just laid down and accepted it. And that's when Seligman came up with the term learned helplessness. And a lot of you are having this aha moment of like, that's why I'm burnt out. Is that when the same problem keeps happening and we've exhausted every opportunity to solve it, then we just gravitate towards this mentality of just accepting it and letting it happen to us. When I have patients that are struggling with learned helplessness, I show them this meme of a cat in one of those like carriers, and the lid is off, but the gate is still there, and the cat thinks it's still trapped because it's right up against the gate. And it says sometimes when you're too close to the problem, you fail to see the solution. Because maybe you've tried other solutions, but you haven't exhausted every solution. You just have the perspective that you did. Because some people date for years and never find that person, and they were like, I'm destined to be alone. Some people try to find that job that gives them fulfillment, even though we can get fulfillment other places other than work. But they try, and they're like, I guess I'm just going to have a crappy job for the rest of my life. But the world's loneliest whale doesn't give up. It continues to call out. So that's the power of perseverance, is to keep calling out and find others as unique as us. And I know this is one of those things that's easier said than done, especially, you remember how easy it was to make friends? You were just in close proximity. They also had a dinosaur on their shirt. You're the same height. It's like, we're best friends now. As adults, especially for males, have you ever just like gone up to a bar and be like, do you have fake glasses too? Do you want to be friends? Like, it doesn't work that way. I'm not a sports person, but I assume that like you like that team and I like that team and then we'll be friends. But if you don't have that, it's very difficult. But find others as unique as you. I mean, just think of like how many awful people are in the world and how they have friends. It's like, okay, I can find my vibe. In fact, my very first Nerd Night talk was on finding your tribe, like the importance of tribal living and why that's still an innate need inside of us. And there are people, even if you're the world's loneliest whale and you vocalize it with a very unique voice, there's going to be others that have that same unique voice or similar one because you are living proof of that. Even if you think you're the only weirdo, you still exist. That means there's other weirdos who, for example, who has a Doctor Who tattoo like me? Oh, damn, that was a bad example. Anyways, what to do? You can volunteer. There's a study of proxemics, of just like what being around people, what is it called? There's a psychological term for it, but the more that you're around people, the more that you trust them. And that's another like innate evolutionary psychology benefit as well, because people in our tribe, like once we realize that we can trust them and let their guard down, then we get more comfortable with them. That's why there's a lot of like crushes and workplace crushes. Don't date your coworkers. It gets super awkward. But just being in close proximity to people, like especially with a mutual passion. So volunteering is a big one. Looking at social groups or even support groups. There's support groups for everything. And now there's even apps out there to help facilitate some connection, especially in a city like Austin that's such a desirable place and there's people moving and uprooting their life from all different parts of the world to be here. There's a lot of transplants that need friends. So Meetup, Base, Dinner with Strangers, Bumble BFF, these are all opportunities to find others that might be in similar boats. Yes, it is very vulnerable to say, I need connection, but it's a need that we all have. We can't pretend like it's just a unique need to us. We can reconnect with old friends, we can join faith organizations, increase our relationships with our families. Or not, I don't know. I have some weirdos in my family. Or even if you feel that there's social or cognitive barriers, that is one opportunity for therapy. You can go to therapy and develop these social skills with the help of a mental health professional, or address some of those barriers to socializing and work on your confidence. But avoid like social vacuums, because when we get desperate, it's like going to HEB when you're hungry, right? Like you're just gonna grab everything that looks good. But when you're at the point of loneliness and desperation, that's how people find themselves in toxic relationships or return to toxic relationships. How many of you have that friend that just dates the same asshole over and over and it's like, what are you doing? Right? Me? Just, okay. But that's how that happens, is like you create a vacuum. Like you get the strength to kick him out of your life and then you're like, who's going to replace them? This is just like the path of least resistance. Or cults or gangs or what I mentioned earlier, emphasizing that artificial connection because it is the path of least resistance. And that's all I've got. Also, side note, one of my favorite things about talking at Nerd Night is I can drink and talk at the same time because the university gets real mad when I do that at work.
We're okay with it. All right, so who's got some questions? All right. A champion emerges towards the back of the room. See what you got here. Make me work for it. I like it. All right, what you got?
First of all, I really liked your talk. I wanted to ask, so have there been studies that have like quantifiably seen the difference between people who are isolated and laugh and people in person who laugh and like their immune system differences over time? Because I'd be very curious to see like people during COVID, like if they were online and had groups who they could talk with and laugh with, like how much their immune system still changed or stayed the same because they could laugh even though it was online. I know that's kind of a broad question.
No, that's such a good question. I don't actually know. I do know that the body, there's these two researchers from India named Dr. Kataria. They're married and they both have Dr. Kataria. That they're the ones that founded laughter yoga. Is anybody familiar with laughter yoga? It's the idea that the body can't actually tell the difference between artificial laughter and real laughter because the physiological and the cognitive benefits are the exact same, whether you're fake laughing or real laughing. So they develop protocols of like games to play of like, pretend like you're picking up your phone and you just saw the funniest text message and then you just laugh out loud like, and it's so dumb that eventually you start really laughing. And there's even laughter line. It's super creepy. Don't do it. But like, it's just you call a 1-800 number and it's just people laughing, and that's to get you laughing. So I know that has physiological benefits, but that's a good question of whether like we could still get those benefits in isolation. I will say, I meant to put this on my resources too. We do have like crisis hotlines and suicide hotlines, but because loneliness is such an epidemic, you now have warm lines, which are like if you're not in crisis but you still need to talk to somebody, there's people available 24 hours a day just to talk about anything, just to have that human connection. Like that's how much of a problem that it's become that we have those resources.
All right, that was an excellent question to start us off. Who's got next? All right, here we go.
Hi, I was just wondering, is there any evidence that loneliness is increasing over time, or are we just measuring it more than we ever used to? Are we more aware of the problem?
Okay, so some like background about academia, it's just a bunch of socially awkward nerds that like to argue with each other. So when you definitively state a fact, there's always going to be people that are like, no. But that is like the argument around like loneliness being the new epidemic. The people that are on the other side saying it's not a thing, they're just saying that we're like quantifying it differently, or we're looking at it differently, or we're measuring it differently. And the argument that they're having is that it's not necessarily increasing. But the pro-loneliness epidemic people are saying it not only is it increasing in frequency, but also intensity as well. So it really just kind of depends on who you ask, unfortunately. Anybody watch John Oliver tonight? He has a segment on like scientific research, and he talks about like how the answer to a scientific question is going to change depending on the angle in which you ask the question or look at the answer. And he has this really great chart where it's like everything on this chart has been known to cause or cure cancer depending on the research. So things like eggs and coffee, that if you're like my age or older, then you're used to the news being like, eggs are healthy. No, eggs are unhealthy. Coffee's good for you. Coffee's going to kill you. This is awesome for you. So there's both sides of that. There's people saying it is increasing frequency and intensity, and there's people saying it's only increasing because we're looking at it more. So yeah, that's a good question.
All right, I think I got it. All right, other question? Oh, okay. Let's go over here, see what's what.
So I really like this talk. Thank you for sharing all this information. And my question is related to this concept of learned helplessness. So basically, my question is there any research which is suggesting ways to break away from that? So how can we help ourselves to see different perspectives when we are stuck in the problems?
That's a good question. So in most questions in psychology and mental health, the answer is always going to be depends, right? Because there's not a one-size-fits-all model for alleviating suffering. Especially with something like learned helplessness, is sometimes it's reflective of reality, like they literally have exhausted all outlets, and sometimes it's their perception that they have when in reality that they haven't. Because a lot of times, like we can feel trapped or we can perceive trapped, and we lose sight that we have little wiggle rooms, right? Like if you hate your commute, how many of you have like an hour plus commute? Oh, just two of us? Y'all, I hate you all. You can feel trapped by that commute, and you can feel just like such a bummer, and this is so expensive. And this is like, I always think about it of like, this is taking essentially 2 to 3 hours out of my work day that I could be working, right? And you can feel like this is just happening to me and succumb to learned helplessness. Or you can see that I can't do anything about the commute, but I have degrees of freedom in that. I can catch up on phone calls with loved ones or friends or family. I can listen to podcasts. I can listen to audiobooks. So I can't solve the problem, but I can lessen it. So it really depends on like what perspective the person has that's leading to that learned helplessness. It's like if you were working in the North Pole and it's like freezing and you can't do anything about the job, you can choose to wear more layers. You can choose to wear gloves. You can choose to wear jackets. You can't solve the coldness problem, but you can change your experience in the problem. So long answer short, it depends on the individual.
All right. I have a question, and normally I try not to ask too many, but I have to tonight. I just can't help myself. I want to bring it back to Wales for a second. The question that I have is around the orca attacks that have been happening on the yachts near Spain. I was wondering if you had any kind of context or thoughts about how they're coordinating those or how they're communicating around those.
I was really hoping you were going with, do you have any contacts with the whales that we can learn what's going on? The best guess is just, so for like populations like infants or animals that we can't just go and ask them, like, why are you doing what you're doing? We can only make observational data and then infer from context. And the only inferences is just like either the yachts are like emitting something that's annoying them and then they're just strategizing, or they just woke up and chose violence. But like the reason why they're happening in such frequency is what I was talking about, like the generational knowledge being passed down, and they're passing information of like how to hunt and damage yachts, rather than just these being like novel ideas in the moment, because they're so coordinated and frequently. Isn't that creepy? Whales could take over the world. The wet parts.
I wouldn't call those attacks creepy, but
yeah, because it's all like millionaires too. Like
no comment. All right. So, question. Do we have any more? Oh, look at this. All right. I think you're our last question for tonight.
Okay, the last two people had accents. Please.
I have an accent.
Can you fake an accent? Oh, you have an accent?
I have.
Okay, cool.
You'll see it now. Is there any new scientific research that you are actively like monitoring and looking forward to clarify some of the mysteries in your field that you really want to know about? Or if there is no such current research, is there a mystery that you would love to be clarified and solved?
Like me personally, like
Yeah,
what
you
research
personal.
for loneliness specifically?
Oh, loneliness, whales, all of the awesome things that we heard about today.
Ooh. I don't know. That's such a good question. No, probably something around. So I mentioned earlier. I mentioned I'm biracial. So like growing, my dad died when I was 5. So I was raised primarily by the Mexican side of the family. And there's one thing the Mexicans are all about is like machismo and like boys being like tough. I remember being 5 years old at my father's funeral crying, and my like Mexican uncle was like, "Toughen up, you're the man of the house now. Be strong for your mom." And that's my form of rebellion, was to become a therapist and only talk about feelings. So like that's a part of my, and I didn't realize until somebody brought it up, the majority of my caseload is men, because men only want to feel vulnerable in front of like other men instead of women. So like my research would be around how to get men to just like turn that part. A lot of it is social conditioning and just like the crap that we tell little boys about that. But like something around just like offering an olive branch to the male psyche, I would definitely be a lot more interested in, because more men gravitate towards talking to chat GPT than women do, because you can be vulnerable with something that's not real. So that would be interesting. One of my grad students wrote a phenomenal paper on like men's addiction to OnlyFans because it offers anonymity and the presence of connection. If you're not familiar, OnlyFans is like a way to legally offer sex work, and you can do like live streams and saucy photos, but there's a chat function as well. And so many men are gravitating towards that for just some romantic connection or just some intimate connection. Regardless if they're even like engaging with the spicy content, it's just the opportunity to have a connection without like the vulnerability of going out and talking. So something around that, of just like offering some peace to our like fragile male egos.
All right. Well, I think we've had a whale of a nerd night. Ah.